So Professor P.P. Sahai is currently Professor HAG in the Department of Physics at Motilal Nehru National Institute of Technology, Allahabad. He received his PhD degree in physics from Banaras Hindu University. He is the recipient of the Science and Engineering Research Council Visiting Fellowship, DST, Government of India, and the Indian National Science Academy Visiting Fellowship. Professor Sahai has been continuously engaged in research in the area of solid-state devices, metal chalconides, thin films, and transparent conducting oxides for the last few decades. His current research interests are multifunctional metal oxide semiconductors and their applications in chemical gas sensors and energy storage devices. Professor Sahai has completed a number of sponsored research projects successfully and is life member of many professional bodies like Semiconductor Society of India, Materials Research Society of India, the Indian Physical Society, and so on. He has published a number of research papers in reputed international journals and having a very high citation. Above all, Professor Sai is a very gentle fellow. He is always open for helping the people. So today the title of his talk is Transition Metal Oxide Best Pseudo Capacitors and Energy Storage Device. So with this brief introduction, I invite Professor Sahai to start his lecture.
Okay, thank you, Professor Pandey. Good afternoon to all of the participants. Let me share the screen.
It is visible, sir.
Just a minute. So the title of my talk is Transition Metal Oxide Based Pseudo Capacitor and Energy Storage Device. Now the question arises, what is the importance of the energy storage device? What is the necessity of that? We all know that due to the rapid development of the global economy, there is a continuous increase in the consumption of fossil fuels, such as your coal, oil, and natural gas. So this has caused the problems of global climate change and environmental pollution. The continuous increase in the consumption of the fossil fuel has increased these problems to significant levels. So now we are trying to develop the renewable clean energy, such as your solar, wind, tidal, and other renewable energy. However, these renewable clean forms of the energy are restricted by environment factors, and therefore energy supply is intermittent, it's not continuous. There is a certain restriction sometimes occurs due to the environmental factors. Thus, we see that there is a need to develop effective and reliable devices for energy storage. As a new type of storage device, electrochemical capacitor, which you also refer to as the supercapacitor, more popular terminology, supercapacitor, the ultracapacitor, have shown great promise as a possible solution to the increasing need for efficient energy storage. We know that the energy devices such as your batteries, supercapacitor, and fuel cells are used in hybrid vehicles and portable electronic devices where the chemical energy is converted to electrical energy via electrochemical reaction. So among these energy devices, that is the battery, supercapacitor, fuel cell, supercapacitor have attracted great attention to the researcher due to their high specific power, excellent cycle life, and rapid charging discharging rate. Here the word is specific power. Sometimes it is said to be the power density. Basically, we calculate per unit mass. If you are taking the electrochemical material, so in that sense it is said that is the high specific power. So in the supercapacitor, we will find these are something special, that is the high specific power, excellent cycle life stability, and rapid charging and discharging rate. Now this is the Rankine plot. Rankine plot is basically, this is the plot between the specific energy and specific power. Here again the specific power, sometimes it is said to be the power density also. So if you look this plot, the fuel cell has large specific energy but low specific power. But low specific power. The conventional batteries, it is large, you can say that specific energy, but specific power is not up to that. But if you look the conventional capacitor, which you are familiar, it has the large specific power, but specific energy is less. So we want to concentrate on the supercapacitor, and we want that how to increase the specific energy of the supercapacitor. So that is our motto. Although batteries can exhibit an excellent energy output, 100 to 200 watt hour per kg. This I have taken from the data from the Rankine plot only. We have taken the data only from Rankine plot. So there is a scaling. So although batteries can exhibit an excellent energy output, 100 to 200 watt hour per kg, they need more time to recharge, meaning to say that it has a poor specific power performance, because it takes a lot of time to recharge. On the other hand, supercapacitor can have specific energy 1 to 10 watt hour per kg, much greater compared to the conventional capacitor. If you look this plot, this specific energy is much greater than the conventional capacitor. Supercapacitor can be charged and discharged at a very fast rate with long cycle lifetime. However, current supercapacitor still have low specific energy compared to batteries. Or you can say that at present, the low energy density is still the bottleneck of supercapacitor. So how will you tackle this problem? How you will do the increase the specific energy or the energy density? We are well familiar with energy density formula. E is equal to half CV square. What is E? E is the energy density, and what is energy density? I told that per unit mass. Here the material mass we are taking the unit. The C represents the specific capacitance and B represents the potential window. Now we have two options with us. If you want to increase E, you will see that how to increase C, that is the specific capacitance of the material to be used in the supercapacitor. And the other is V, how to increase the potential window. So to enhance performance of the supercapacitor, two main approaches. The one, to fabricate advanced supercapacitor with high specific capacitance. And second, how to enhance the potential window in which supercapacitor can operate. Okay? Usually, a good choice of electric material with remarkable electrical conductivity, because we are depositing a film on a conducting surface, so electrical conductivity of the material should be high. So a good choice of the electrode materials with remarkable electrical conductivity and a large specific surface area. What is the meaning of the specific surface area? This is the total surface area of a material per unit mass. Okay, so the specific surface area and the electrical conductivity of the material, that is the electrode material, that needs to be taken care. That is the main aspect for developing the high performance supercapacitor. Now we see that the two main approaches. We see how to increase the specific capacitance of the material, how to enhance the potential window so that the energy density can be increased. Now, the specific surface general. This is the general category, that a good choice of the electrode material with a remarkable electrical conductivity and a large specific surface area is the main aspect for developing high performance supercapacitor. Now, based on the charge storage mechanism, because something is going in the electrochemical capacitor, because it stores charges, some phenomena occurs. So based on the charge storage mechanism in electrochemical capacitor, supercapacitors are classified into the two categories. The one we call electrochemical double layer capacitor, that is EDLC, electrochemical double layer capacitor, and the second is pseudo capacitor, or it is also called redox, that is reduction oxidation supercapacitors. I will focus on the pseudo capacitor, but before coming to that, I will also touch something about the EDLC. So based on the charge storage mechanism, the electrochemical capacitor have been classified into the two categories. One, EDLC, and the second is the pseudo capacitor or the redox supercapacitor. So what is the difference between these two? In the EDLC, that is the first one, charges are stored at the electrolyte interface by forming electrochemical double layer. You just see this figure. This is the schematic representation of the EDLC. So you see, in this one, the charges are stored at the electrode. This is the electrolyte, and this is the current collector, that is the conductive, and we have deposited electrode material, and this is the counter electrode. So in EDLC, the charges are stored at the electrolyte interface by forming electrochemical double layer. It is plus minus, minus plus. no Faradic reaction occurs. In the case of EDLC, there is no Faradic reaction. Faradic reaction you will see in the pseudocapacitor it happens. So we can say that in EDLC, energy is stored with the charge accumulating on the interface between the electrode and electrolyte, which is due to the accumulation of the charge, energy is stored in the case of first EDLC. Now you come to the pseudocapacitor. Here what happens, if you look this figure here, the energy is stored through a fast reversible Faradic redox reaction. A redox reaction takes place here. This is your ruthenium oxide layer. This is the transition metal oxide, the most prominent transition metal oxide used for the supercapacitor. And this is the electrolyte. This is the H, might be H2SO4. So here, this is the ion. So the Faradic reaction takes place. So in the pseudocapacitor, the energy is stored through a fast and reversible redox reaction. That is, in this case, what happened? The charge transfer between electrode, that is ruthenium oxide, and electrolyte takes place. So the transfer of charges basically the electrons, transfer of electrons. So the transfer of charges, that is the electrons, causes oxidation or reduction to occur here. I told that this is the Faradic redox reaction. Why this Faraday is coming? Why this? Here I have also mentioned the Faradic redox. Why this Faraday? Actually, such reaction which is occurring here, that is the redox reaction, is governed by Faraday's law. And what is Faraday's law? That is the amount of chemical reaction caused by the flow of current is proportional to the amount of electricity passed. That's why this redox reaction is also said to be Faradic process. And the electrodes at which this Faradic reaction occurs, we also sometimes call charge transfer electrode, because basically electron transfer from electrolyte ions to the electrode material. So here sometimes it is also said to be the charge transfer electrode. So thus we see that based on the mechanism, charge storage mechanism, electrochemical capacities are classified into the two categories. The one was the electrochemical double layer capacitor, and the second was the pseudocapacitor. In the EDLC, energy is stored with the charge accumulating at the interface between the electrolyte and electrode, while in pseudocapacitor, charge is stored through a fast and reversible Faradic redox reaction. Now, the type of mechanism involved in supercapacitor depends on the type of electrode material. In which material, which phenomena will occur, that depends upon the type of material. Electrode material, what I mean to say. Electrode materials can be broadly divided into three categories. For supercapacitor, I am telling. Electrode material for the supercapacitor can be broadly divided into three categories. One is the carbon-based materials. For example, activated carbon, graphene, carbon nanotubes, carbon nanofibers, and so on. you will see that normally in the carbon materials, the charge storage mechanism is EDLC. The second is the conductive polymer, that is the polypyrrole, polyadenine, and so on. And third is the transition metal oxide. What is transition metal? The simple definition is that what you call these metal oxide have partially filled d orbitals and multiple valence state. This is the normal definitions. We can say that in the transition metal oxide, it is the oxide of the transition metals which have the partially filled d orbitals and multiple valence bands. Now, some of the oxide I have mentioned here: ruthenium oxide, manganese oxide, nickel oxide, cobalt oxide, vanadium, and copper oxide. So, in the next slide, carbon materials. Something I have mentioned here. Carbon materials are usually used as electrode materials for EDLC. They have the characteristics of high specific surface area, adjustable pore size distribution, and excellent electrical conductivity. This is something very, very important things with the carbon. This excellent electrical conductivity does not lie in the transition metal oxide, and this is the big hurdle for the people who are doing the work on the transition metal oxide. So the carbon has, that is the excellent electrical conductivity. They can provide high power density. That is, the specific power is high, but specific energy is low, which limits the overall performance. The low specific capacitance of carbon materials limits the capacity of the EDLC, and the application of those carbon materials are limited by their high cost. There are something which is good in the carbon materials like the electrical conductivity, but there is certain constraints. That is the supercapacitor based on the carbon-based materials have high specific power but low energy, resulting the overall performance is not up to that limit. Moreover, the high cost of the carbon, that is also a factor. Now, conducting polymers. The conductive and pseudo-capacitive properties of the conducting polymers are good. This polymer is also conducting, and pseudo-capacitive properties are also good. But the electrochemical stability is poor. And conducting polymers can easily fall off the substrate. If you do a number of cycles, so the chemical stability is poor, and it is chances that the conducting polymer may fall off from the substrate. For example, the charge and discharge speed of polyaniline is low, and the stability of the charge-discharge process is poor. So conducting polymers have its own limitation. Now, this is the transition metal oxide that I will focus you. Transition metal oxide, as I told, these are the oxides which are the popular oxide for the electrode materials. That's why they have been mentioned. And ruthenium oxide is the most prominent one. Transition metal oxide are the potential candidate to be used in supercapacitor due to their excellent electrochemical characteristics. Although the energy density of supercapacitor based on transition metal oxide have shown an improvement to a considerable extent the poor electrical conductivity of the transition metal oxide. The poor electrical conductivity and slow moving ion diffusion in the bulk phase has put an obstacle, has put an hurdle in the efficient use of this oxide in the supercapacitor. So, poor electrical conductivity, this is one of the important hurdles in the efficient use of the transition metal oxide in the supercapacitor and slow moving ion diffusion in the bulk phase. Among various transition metal oxides, the most promising one is the ruthenium oxide. A lot of work has been done on the ruthenium oxide, which exhibits excellent pseudo-capacity performance with a large specific capacitance of as high as 720 farad per gram and excellent reversibility. However, the high cost, rareness, and toxic nature of the ruthenium oxide have limited its commercial use because its toxicity to environment and the high cost of the raw materials have put an obstacle in its commercial use. But ruthenium oxide has been proved to be the most promising one among the transition metal oxide. So the people are searching some other alternative. So another important transition metal oxide is manganese oxide, which has attracted much attention for supercapacitor application due to low cost of raw materials, environmental friendliness, high capacity performance in the aqueous electrolytes, and reversible surface redox reaction. So basically, I did the work on the manganese oxide. Now we will discuss the result associated with the manganese oxide, which I carried out. Manganese oxide exists in several crystallographic phases. Where is the cursor? Yes, manganese oxide exists in several crystallographic phases. That is your alpha MnO2, beta MnO2. So alpha, beta, R, gamma. So these are the different crystallographic phases in the case of manganese oxide, where the MnO6 octahedral units are linked together in various ways through corner or ace sharing to form layer or tunnel structure. Now, one question will come in your mind. This is the manganese oxide. Normally, with the any thing, there should be one crystallographic phase. What happens in the case of manganese oxide? The polymorphism of the manganese oxide depends upon synthesis method. How you prepare the manganese oxide. And because of the synthesis method, the phenomena of polymorphism occurs. And not only synthesis method, it also depends upon synthesis condition also, like the precursor which you are using, what is the temperature, electrode potential, and so on. There are different process parameters, synthesis process parameters that will influence the crystallographic phases of the MnO2. Okay. Oh, this is the crystallographic data I have taken from some reference. So alpha MnO2 is the tetragonal structure, RMnO2 is the orthorhombic. So if you are, suppose you have prepared your film and found that it is the orthorhombic, so we can say that it is RMnO2. In my case, which I prepare, I found the manganese oxide film is the hexagonal. And we say that it is the epsilon MnO2. So these are the standard data available online also. Yes. Now I told that the polymorphism of the MnO2 depends upon the synthesis method. If you want to prepare the thin film, we are well aware there are a number of techniques available. So just the entire deposition technique has been classified into the two categories. One we call the physical technique, and other we call the chemical technique. In the physical, there is a further subdivision. One is sputter, another is evaporation. In the evaporation, there are different techniques like thermal evaporation, electron beam, then your flash evaporation, laser. There are a number of techniques are there available. Similarly, in the sputter, there is a DC glow discharge. Then you tried sputtering, then come to your RF sputtering, then magnetospectring, ion beam sputtering. So all this comes under this one. Similarly, in the chemical, there is a gas phase, with the chemical vapor deposition, metal argon chemical vapor deposition, plasma enhanced chemical vapor deposition, and liquid phase. Now, if you go a little bit in detail of this technique, you will arrive at the conclusion all the physical techniques involve expensive equipment. All these techniques which I have mentioned in the physical, all are involved, require expensive equipment. And what I feel that the most cheapest one is the thermal evaporation technique. That unit is available in a number of institutions, even for the master project work. Other than that, electron beam, flash evaporation, laser, RF, all these techniques very costly. Now come to the chemical part. In the chemical part, gas phase there is a problem, but liquid phase, this is a little bit not expensive technique involved. And that's why in many institutions, the people who are doing the work on the thin film related, they prefer to do the work on that. One of the reason is because it involves less costly equipment and may be available in many institutions, like the deep coating, spin coating, spray pyrolysis, hydrothermal. So all these are not involved very costly. So in my study, in our study, which my student has done, we have prepared the manganese oxide film by the electro deposition technique. So preparation of your manganese oxide thin film. As I told you, several deposition techniques have been used to prepare the manganese oxide film with different morphology to examine their suitability for electrochemical application. So electrodeposition is one of them, and it is an efficient method to prepare MnO2 film. Why we have adopted? Because as the technique is simple, consumes the less energy, very little power, and can be used to control, that is more important, and can be used to control the resulting morphology simply by manipulating the current, that how much current you pass, bath chemistry, what is the solvent precursor which is used in this electrolytic cell, and also the temperature. Now in the electrode deposition, there are three modes by which the film can be deposited. The one we call the potentiostatic mode. Here, the voltage on the substrate is kept constant. In the potentiodynamic, we use the cyclic voltammetric, that is scan rate. In the case of the galvanostatic, you fix the current. And in my case, I have observed that these three different modes influence the surface morphology, and because of the surface morphology, the crystallographic phase, and consequently the electrochemical performance of the film. In our case, the crystallographic phase was the same in all the cases, all the same, that is epsilon MnO2, that is the hexagonal crystallographic phase. But so far the morphology is concerned, the electrochemical performance of the film, that was changed. Here in this case, in the case of the potentiostatic electrodeposition of the MnO2 film was carried out by applying a voltage of 0.2 volt, which we have applied. And this 0.2 volt, how we achieve? By trial and error. We did a number of times. We started from 01, 02, 03, 04, and so on. We tried to make the film with a different potential, and then we tried to study the electrochemical performance of the film. And finally, we got that the film deposited the 0.2 is exhibiting the most favorable and electrochemical performance. In the case of galvanostatic electrodeposition, the current density was 1 milliampere per centimeter square. In the case of potentiodynamic deposition, was carried out with the potential window of 0 to 0.3 volt. That was the only potential window at 2 millivolt per second scan rate. So all these process parameters have been optimized. That is 0.2, 1 milliampere, 2 millivolt window. These are the optimized parameters which we are quoting here. This result I published in the Ceramic International Journal, that is complete details are given. The deposited surface area of the film was 2.2 centimeter to 0.8 centimeter. And the mass deposited, that is magnetic oxide, in the PS, that is the potentiostatic, potentiodynamic, galvanostatic modes, was 0.42, 0.47, and 0.53 milligram respectively. Okay. Yes. What is the reaction mechanism? Here, we have used the precursor KMnO4, potassium permanganate. You will see also there are a number of precursors available that can be used, like your manganese sulfate, manganese acetate. Then I use the KMnO4, and later on you will see that even the electrochemical performance depends upon the precursor used to prepare the films. Here I have used the KMnO4. So the formation of the MnO2 films occur due to the diffusion of anionic, that is MnO4 species in the electrolyte solution towards the positive working electrode. Here there are three electrodes. One is the working electrode. That working electrode means we have deposited the film on the stainless steel substrate. So stainless steel substrate was attached with the working electrode. There was a counter electrode, that is the platinum, and there is a reference electrode, that is AgCl. So since it is a negative cation, anion MnO4 minus species in the electrolyte solution towards the positive working electrode, where these species subsequently undergo reduction. You look this reaction. This is the reaction which occurs at the substrate surface. That is MnO4 minus plus 2HO3. So MnO2 film is formed. The reduction process of this one is influenced by a number of factors, such as the electrode potential. Electrode potential means, what I mean to say, that 0.2 I put it in the case of the potential static. It also varies pH, concentration of the MnO4 minus. I recall that I put it 0.1 molar concentration of the KMnO4 and other species in the solution. So this is the reaction mechanism. This is your deposition curve. This is the potentiostatic deposition mode. Here, with reference to the AgCl, we put the 0.2 volt applied, that is the deposition potential, and measure the current density time graph. You see that this is the minus sign is here. So if you see that there is a movement of in the beginning, there is a movement of MnO4 species towards the positive working electrode. Here there is a gradual decrease. You see, there is a gradual decrease going on, and after that, decrement is very, very small. A gradual, first decreasing rapidly for a while, and after that a gradual decrease in the current is observed. So why so this happens basically? So basically what happened, in the beginning the MnO4 species moves towards the positive electrode, and this reaction occurs. When this reaction occurs, the OH minus ion comes out. So because of this electron generation of the hydroxyl ion slows down the movement of MnO4. Because in the beginning, when you have just started, there was no H minus ion. So MnO4 is moving quickly to the electrode surface. This reaction occurs. So there is electron generation of the hydroxyl ion. So this hydroxyl ion now hinders the movement of this one. And after that, an equilibrium is achieved. So that's why in the beginning there is a fast decrement, and after that the equilibrium is achieved. Similarly, if you see in the potential dynamic case also, there is a slight variation in the cyclovoltagrams. See, because each time one after the other. So why there is this changes occur? This is attributed to the deposition of MnO2 field on the working electrode during the preceding cycle. Because if one cycle is complete, some amount of MnO2 will deposit. When the second cycle will repeat, that will influenced by the previous deposition of the MnO2. And in the case of, this is the galvanostatic, here also, here current is constant. I told that there are three different modes. So when the current is constant, we are measuring the potential and time. When the potential is constant, we are measuring the current and time. So here also you see the potential first reduces rapidly, and afterwards gradually decreases. So this is attributed to the interaction of the ions moving in the cathodic direction with the ions electromagnetic in the anodic direction, only because of this one and this one. So this is the deposition curve. Now, once you deposit any film for any device application, first we'll have to categorize the film, whether our film has been prepared or not. Not only in the supercapacitor, but in other cases also. So the very popular technique is you do the XRD. And we compare the XRD profile with the standard JCPD SCADA ICG database. And when it matches, we say that our film is prepared. But in some cases, we find that it is the pic is not very clear. Then we'll have to move towards the other techniques. In addition to the XRD, that is your FTIR and Raman. So here in this case, this is the XRD profile. Here you see this square one. This is the stainless steel. So and this is triangle is for the epsilon M/2, and this is the film prepared from potentiostatic. This is from potentiodynamic, and this is galvanostatic. Now you look here, you will see that stainless steel peak and MnO2 is coinciding at the same point. Here in this one peak is coming clearly, but here it is coinciding. This is for 220 stainless. This is stainless peak, but here it is coinciding. Here also coinciding. So a confusion is creating in mind whether this peak is from stainless or MnO2. So what we do, we got certain peak especially for the MnO2. Here there is only MnO2 peak. Here also there is a MnO2 peak, independent peak, no overlapping. Here also one independent peak, but still there was a doubt. So what are the XRD result I mentioned? XRD patterns confirm the hexagonal crystallographic phases of epsilon manganese dioxide, which is in good agreement with the JCPD SCOT number, this one. This is a normal practice. The varying in here you look after this one. There the intensity is varying. The XRD peak intensity is varying. Variation in the intensity means crystallinity of the film. So when it is high, crystallinity is better. When it is low, crystallinity. So the varying intensity of the reflection peaks suggests that the crystallinity of the films is influenced by the deposition mode, because intensity was different for the different films, which was deposited by the different deposition mode. Diffraction peak 100 corresponds to the stainless steel peak. Since there was some overlapping, so we carried out Raman also. In Raman, if you say for the different, that is your galvanostatic, potentiodynamic, and potentiostatic, there are the three deposition modes by which the film is prepared. Here you see the strong pit at 648 centimeter inverse is assigned to symmetric MnO, manganese and oxygen, stretching vibration of the MnO6. Here variation intensity is varying. In spite of variation in relative band intensity, the general similarity of the spectra suggests that the films are characterized by the same basic structure, though the intensity is varying. But the general similarity, that is around 648 of the spectra, suggests that the film are characterized by the same basic structure. Okay, so thus we have prepared the film by the electrode deposition technique, adopting the 3 electrode deposition modes, and then we have gone through the structural characterization by the XRD and Raman. Now we study the morphology. When you talk about the morphology, the very common we use the scanning electron microscopy, and if you want to find the topographic image, that is we want to find the roughness. In that case, you have to go to the AFM, and I have seen that in case of the electrochemical performance, if you study the AFM, in the AFM, you will when you perform the AFM and analyze the data, there is a projected area and there is the image surface area. So if the image surface area is more, in that case, what will happen? The electrolyte will come in more area. So redox reaction will occur in larger area compared to the film which has less roughness. So here you see, this is your SEM images. If you look this figure, this is your PM. This is PD. This is GS. If you see, in the case of in this one, this is a porous structure. You see, this is if you look this figure here. If you look this is more compact, and here if you enlarge it and look that, you will find that this is interconnected grains. So what I want to say that the surface morphology of the emulator film are influenced greatly by varying the deposition modes, because all the 3 figures are not same. Here in the previous one behaves as a porous material which allows the electrolyte ions to easily diffuse through the electrode bulk, leading to an enhancement in the number of ferritic redox reaction. So this is more favorable structure. In case of this one, that is your potentiodynamic deposited film. It shows a compact microstructure of the film and consisting of a very fine grains. Okay, and this is the EDAS graph. This represents the compositional analysis or elemental analysis. Now you see, this is the AFM. This is a 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional. In 3-dimensional, you see, we will calculate that we are using the terminology image surface area and image projected area, and here we have scanned the film around you see 1 micron into 1 micron. Okay, 1 micron we have scanned the film, and this is the 2-dimensional. So with the image surface area and image projected area, we have calculated the roughness factor, that is AFM. AFM is the surface area estimated from the image, which you call the image surface area, and A projection, that is the image projected area. And when you calculated for all the 3 films, we found that the roughness factor have been found to range from about 1.2 to 1.6 for these films. That is, the films have measured surface area ranging from 20 to 60% higher than the corresponding protected area. Okay, because protected area we have taken 1 micron into 1 micron. But when you find out the image surface area, it was more. And that more means it is 20% to 60% higher than the protected area. And if the roughness factor is more, what we observe in our study, that favors the enhancement in the electrochemical performance. Now, in the electrochemical characterization, not only the 3 studies are popular, are very important. One we call the cyclic voltammetry. From cyclovoltammetry, we can find out the specific capacitance of the material. There is another study we call the galvanostatic charge discharge. From that also, we can also calculate the specific capacitance. That is the second one. And third one is the impedance spectroscopy, what we call the electrochemical impedance spectroscopy, that is EIS. So in the cyclovoltammetry, what we did here, this is the comparative study. Comparative study means all the 3 film at 5 millivolt scan rate, at 10 millivolt, 30 millivolt, and 50 millivolt scan rate. Okay. And from this one, we calculated the specific capacitance of the film. If you look these figures, we can say that all the CV curves are almost rectangular in shape, as well as nearly symmetrical between the cathode and the anode process. So these 2 things, almost rectangular in shape, this suggests the ideal capacitive behavior of the as deposited MnO2 films. So this is the general look. It looks like the rectangular shape and is also symmetrical. Symmetrical between the cathode and anode process. So same thing I have written. All the CV curves are almost rectangular in shape, as well as nearly symmetrical between the cathode and the anode process, suggesting the ideal capacitive behavior of the as deposited MnO2 films. Okay. Now you will calculate the specific capacitor. You will find out a number of papers. Somewhere you will find this formula has been used, somewhere you will find this formula has been used. Both the formulas are correct. Only if you see a specific capacitance of the film has been calculated using the relation, that is a specific capacitance, Faraday per grams, 1 upon m v delta v. What is m? That is the mass of the electrode material, active material you can say. What is the small v? This is the scan rate. That is the millivolt per second. Here we have taken in the millivolt. Delta V, this is the potential window. And this is your I. That is current during discharge. And since you are telling discharge, that is from 0.9 volt to 0. Okay, you look this figure. That is from 0.9 volt to 0 we are getting. That is discharge. So by by using this your IV means current or CV plot, we can find out specific capacitance by this way. But using the NOVA software, after measuring this CV measurements, we can plot the graph current versus time also. So when you plot current versus time plot, and that you take into account, you will have to use this graph, this formula. Here A is the same mass of the active material. Delta V, that is the potential window. Here A is the time corresponding to 0.9 volt. And B is the time corresponding to V is equal to 0. Okay, so both this formula equal. So that's why I have written here. So somewhere I have used this one also, somewhere I have used this one also. So this formula I have used, I think, in recently 2021 paper published. That is your Journal of Allies and Compounds. I use this formula, but previous I have used this one also. So what the result we got from the CV? A specific capacitance has been found to be maximum 259.4 farad per gram for the MnO2 potentiostatic film, followed by 187.1 farad per gram and 180.3 farad gram for these three films. So maximum is for potentiostatically deposited MnO2 film, followed by potentiodynamically deposited, and least is for galvanostatic. So this is the one. Why this variation occurs? The variation in specific capacitance value of the film is attributed to varying morphological features of the film, because from the SCM and AFM we have seen that morphology of the films are different, because morphology of the films are influenced by the deposition mode. For all the films, a specific capacitance decreases with the enhanced scan rate. But natural, if the scan rate is fast, the ions will not get sufficient time to intercalate into the film. So that is the reason all the film specific capacitance decreases with the enhanced scan rate. Okay, so this is the inferences drawn from the cyclic voltammetric study. Now we are coming to the galvanostatic charge discharge measurement. Here again, same thing. This is the comparative plot for the three films. In the first case, I have taken the current density 1 milliampere. In the second figure, current density 2 milliampere and current density 3 milliampere. Here also, you will calculate the specific capacitance by using some different formulas. In all the films, the charging and discharging times are almost equal. That is the charging time is almost equal to the discharging time. So what it will suggest? It suggests that the films have excellent Coulombic efficiency and a high degree of reversibility. Okay, because there is a formula for the Coulombic efficiency, might be in the just next slide. That is the Coulombic efficiency defined as the ratio of discharging time TD and the charging time this one. When the charge discharge current densities are equal. So this is the normal formula. So this is the first inference which we have drawn. The second, after the initial short ohmic drop of the potential, for a while the discharge curves are almost, you see there is a little bit potential drop. This potential drop arises due to the internal resistance of the film. And if you increase this one, if you increase the current density, this drop is more. Very common thing. V is equal to IR. So if I is increasing, so the V is increasing. So this drop is more. Here it is further more because it is 3 milliampere. It is 2 milliampere or it is 1 milliampere. So this drop is because of that. The charge discharge process is basically the fast reversible redox reaction. You see, this is the reaction which is occurring there. Our film is MnO2. The electrolyte which I use is the sodium sulfate, NO2SO4. So what happens? The sodium, this comes and forms this one. So the charge and discharge process is basically, so during the charging, this phenomenon occurs, discharging, back. So charge discharge process is basically the fast reversible redox reaction involving intercalation, deintercalation of sodium ions in and out of the film. So during charging, it is in, during discharging, it is out. And this is the Faraday reaction. Okay. Now, Coulombic efficiency, I already told you. And to calculate the specific capacitance, energy density, and the power density of the film from this measurement means galvanostatic charge discharge means you will have to use this formula. This formula is also not difficult. Basically, all these are based on, you know, that E is equal to half CV square. Only it has derived from only that, only somewhere it is hour per kg and all this thing has been carried out. So it comes 3.6 or something. Otherwise, nothing is special in this formula. It is the basic formula which you are using. And this is the energy density. When you divide by time, it gives the power. So where I is the discharge current, delta T is the discharge time. Here I is the discharge current, delta T. This is the discharge time. M, that is mass of the active material. Okay, the same thing. And delta V, this is the potential change during discharge. Potential change means if you are taking discharge 1, how much you are taking. So this is the potential change. So we calculated from both, from cyclic voltammetry as well as from galvanostatic charge discharge. And we tabulated everything here in the tabular form. If you look this table, one thing is very clear. The magneto, that is potentiostatically deposited into film, that is this one, has larger specific capacitance. Whether you calculate from the cyclovoltammetry or galvanostatic or coronal charge discharge, in both the cases, its value is more compared to the other two. Okay. So this is the normal inferences. So specific capacitance decreases with the enhanced current density. This is the inferences which we have taken from galvanostatic charge discharge. Specific capacitance decreases with the enhanced current density, which may be due to faster movement of cations and thereby not getting enough time to intercalate to the voids in MnO2 lattice at higher current densities. So in the table, we have calculated current density 1, current density 2, current density 3. So it was 325.6, 325.6. Why? It is decreasing. It is decreasing. Why so? Because here the ion does not get enough time to intercalate into the voids of the MnO2 lattice. Correlation between the electrochemical performance and the surface roughness of the film gives an indication of better supercapacitor performance for the film having higher roughness factor. That is, if the image surface area of the film is more, that will favor the better supercapacitor performance. And we have also carried out electrochemical cycle life stability. To study that, we have recorded the galvanostatic charge discharge measurement at a current density for 1000 cycle. You repeated this graph. Sorry, this graph repeated. This is one cycle. So this way we carried out 1000 times. Only this one. And we got and we calculated the specific capacitance, and we see that the specific capacitance is almost constant with a small decrease of about 4% in the initial specific capacitance values over the first 10-15 cycles. The specific capacitance remains almost constant over the entire cycle, indicating the excellent cycle life stability of the deposited MnO2 films. Okay, so the film here, that is the MnO2 film, deposited film, exhibits very good electrochemical stability. We have carried out the EIS study also, that is your electrochemical impedance spectroscopy study. In the electrochemical impedance spectroscopy study, basically what we do, we plot the graph and we call this graph as the Nyquist impedance plot. Here we plot a frequency, this is the frequency dependent profile. Okay, and here this is your imaginary component, and this is the real component of the impedance, and this is the imaginary component. And this is the frequency dependent profile, and this side, that is left side, is the higher potential. If you move from left to right, you will see that frequency decreases. So if you look this figure here, this figure consists of a depressed circle. This, in all the cases, this is one, this is. So this plot consists of a depressed semicircle in the high frequency region. This is the high frequency region. That is the left part of each curve, followed by a straight line having slope about 45 degrees with the real impedance. So there is a slope about 45. What this line indicates that the linear curve in the this is the low frequency region, this is the high frequency region. So this linear curve in the low frequency region is associated to diffusion control charge transfer process, because ions have to diffuse to the electrode material. Okay, so this linear curve, linear plot in the low frequency region, this is attributed to the diffusion control charge transfer process, while the depressed circle in the high frequency region, this is attributed to the Faraday redox reaction. Faraday redox reaction means that is charge transfer process. So basically, what the idea is that during the electrochemical process, the two processes are dominating, and these two processes occur simultaneously. One is the capacitive behavior of the charge separation at the electrode electrolyte interface. There is a charge accumulation also at the interface, and another resistive behavior of the electron transfer. So these two processes occur simultaneously, leading to the semicircular response. So these are the established result that I am done, and that's why we are getting. What the importance is, why we are getting depressed circle in this case. Normal case, it should be the semicircle. If the two dominant processes are occurring, it should be response should be semicircular. But in our case, why it is different? So reason is that
Sir, you are not audible. There is some internet issue. Professor Saha is about to back.
Hello.
Yes, please. Probably there is some internet problem, and he is about to join by some other connection.
Yes, sir.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Audible.
There was
Yes,
a
sir.
issue. Okay, just
Yeah.
a minute. Let me share the screen.
Hello, the slide is visible?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Visible. Please go ahead.
So what I was telling that the EI study, so this is an equidistant impedance plot. So the depression in the semicircle is attributed to varying reaction rates at the different location because this is the electrode surface. So the reaction rate at different points are different. Because of that, there is a depression in the semicircle. So this is we have calculated the equivalent series resistance of the systems for the three different, and we got these are the results. The varying ESR values are attributed to the different microstructural features of the film. The intercept of the semicircle on the low frequency side, what I mean to say, the intercept of the semicircle on the low frequency side, that will give the charge transfer resistance. So that we calculated, that comes to be 3.47 and so on. So this is your table. The same thing I have summarized, that is the series resistance, the charge transfer resistance, is the Barber diffusion, this constant phase element. So all these have come from your electrochemical impedance spectroscopy. Now these deposited films which we have discussed till that, we have prepared for the KMnO4 solution, that is the potassium permanganate, using three different modes of electrodeposition. Now after that, we have used the different plating solution. So for the different plating solution, we have used the potassium permanganate, manganese sulfate, and manganese acetate. And you prepare the film by all the three different modes. And the best result I quoted, we have already completed the work on the KMnO4 and found that the film deposited in the potentiostatic mode is the best among all the three modes. Similarly, we carried it out for the manganese sulfate and the manganese acetate. So basically what happens in the electrochemical deposition of MnO2 involve two approaches. One is the anodic deposition, and other we call the cathodic deposition. For anodic deposition, cationic, that is your manganese sulfate, Mn2 plus precursor is commonly used. That is MnSO4. This manganese state will have to use. and when it is cathodic deposition, we'll have to use the aniline, that is your KMnO4 precursor is used. Okay, so if you study the way, among the anodic and cathodic, which is better, you will, when you go through the literature and find out, the cathodic deposition offers more versatility, as the metal oxide can be deposited on a variety of electrode materials. So it is the preferred one, but a number of works have been done with this one also. So this is the same thing which I discussed earlier also. For KMnO4, I will put only one result, which is the best. For the manganese sulfate, we observed that potentiostatic mode is the best one. Here also the potentiostatic. And manganese state case, we find galvanostatic mode is more preferred. So only that deposition graphs we quoted here. And what is the reaction mechanism? In the case of MnO4, we have already discussed this result. So for the manganese sulfate and manganese state is concerned, this is the reaction mechanism which is going on. That is the oxidation of MnO2 plus occurs, and we got the film of MnO2. Okay. Now, like the previous one, we'll have to go to the XRD. We carried out the XRD for all the three, and we got that in this case, hexagonal phases of the epsilon and the oxide. Here again, we carried out for the surface morphology of the film by both SEM and AFM. In the case of the SEM, SEM, we have seen that this is the same figure in the KMnO4. These two are new one. This is for manganese sulfate. This is for your manganese acetate. So the morphology is something different here. Even the three-dimensional figures also, the morphology is something different. So topography, pictures are different. So with this figure, what I want to convey, that morphological features of the film depends upon the precursor used in the formation of the MnO2 film. The morphological features are also influenced by electrode deposition modes. So the influence is drawn from the SEM. SEM image, the MnO2 exhibits a porous structure comprising of the sparsely distributed, which alloys electrolyte ions. So this is the same thing we discussed earlier, because the KMnO4 we have already discussed earlier. These two are new. In the case of manganese sulfate, presents a uniform morphology covered with nanofibers having porous spaces between them. That is, this is the nanofibers having porous spaces between, and manganese exhibits a dense morphology comprising of nanofibers. Here the morphology is more dense as compared to this one here. The surface area estimated from the image, we calculated the surface area, that is the roughness. This is the figure associated with the cyclic voltammetry, and this is the galvanostatic charge figure. The specific capacitance has been found to be maximum 259.4. For the potentiostatically, in the case of KMnO4, followed by 253.9 for the film manganese sulfate, not 259.4 in case of KMnO4, 253.9 in case of MnSO4, and 130 for the magnet. So this is from the cycle. We calculated the specific capacitance from the galvanostatic charge discharge measurement, and there you will see that in case of the KMnO4, these are the specific capacitance values for 1, 2, 3, and for the MnSO with the when you prepare the film with the MnSO4, this is the value. This is the value calculated from galvanostatic charge discharge measurement, and this is your specific power. If you look this one, the specific power is more here in this case compared to the previous one. So this is the important feature. An important feature observed is that the specific capacitance is maximum for the film MnSO4. This is the maximum for the MnSO4, followed by those for the MnO2, this one, and list for this one. This is attributed to the first Faradic charge transfer process. Why is the Faradic reaction? This is the this is the result we have from the MnSO4. We carried out electrotherapy, similar thing. What is the best electrodeposition mode? Is the anionic MnO4 or men. Okay. So among all the three means what? KMnO4, MnSO4, and magnetic state. Among all the three precursors, the KMnO4 is the best, and potential static mode is best. Among the different plating solution, MnO2 film prepared by KMnO4 exhibits optimum electrochemical performance, which is attributed to macrostructural features of the film. The specific power is maximum for the film MnO2, MS4, followed by KMnO4, and this is for the list. So this is the conclusion inferences drawn from this comparative study of the supercapacitive performance of the film using different plating solution. The last few slides. So what the problem with the transition metal oxide? The transition metal oxide, the main problem is the conductivity of the film is not good. So you want to enhance the electrical conductivity. So there are certain ways to do that, but not with the independent like magnesium oxide. We have to use binary ternary metal oxide. So that's why I mentioned strategy opted to solve the problem. Electrochemical energy storage systems are effective ways to provide a safe and green energy future for the world. The electrochemical process involving charge transfer and in EES system. The performance of the EES system is strongly dependent upon the electrode material. The electrochemical performances of the binary transition metal oxide. We are using the binary 2 metal oxide. Binary transition metal oxide stability. So what are the 3-4 points? The simultaneous presence of two different cations in a single crystal structure produces more electrons than single metal oxide. If you are using, example it is given, if you are using nickel oxide and cobalt oxide independently, their conductivity will be less compared to the nickel cobaltite, that is NiCO2O4. So with the binary metal oxide, if we are using, it is possible that we can enhance the electrical conductivity of the film. This is the one. The second, usually binary transition metal oxide with the novel nanostructure are porous. If you are using the binary transition metal oxide with the novel nanostructure are porous and have a higher specific surface area. The porous morphology and the higher surface specific area of this oxide favor easy diffusion of ions to arrive at the electrode-electrolyte interface, resulting in the occurrence of enhanced electrochemical rate of reaction, which lead to improved capacitive performances. Additionally, the improved chemical stability of the oxide ensures long cycle life stability. What I mean to say that if you are using the binary transition metal oxide with the novel nanostructure, so that nanostructure will be porous, and being the porous structure, there will be easy diffusion of ions at the electrolyte interface, resulting in the high performance electrochemical. Third, composite comprising metal oxide and carbon. Carbon has good electrical conductivity. So if you are making a composite comprising metal oxide and carbon, have been found to exhibit higher electrical conductivity and improved supercapacitor performances. The last, the formation of oxygen vacancy into metal oxide results in a larger interlayer spacing. This favors faster charge storage kinetics, exhibiting an improved supercapacitive behavior. For instance, the supercapacitive charge storage of molybdenum O3-X is much higher than that of MO3. That is, if there are oxygen vacancy, that will make your interlayer spacing, and that favors the supercapacitive behaviors. So what the nut conclusion? Thus, by modifying the composition and nanostructure of the binary metal oxide materials and compositing with the other highly conducting layers, that is carbon and or some scaffolds appropriately, it is possible to have a significant enhancement in electrical conductivity, specific surface area, and the availability of electrochemically active site, leading to a tremendous boost in the electrochemical performances. So I think this is the last. Okay, thanks to all of you. So any questions from your side?
So, sir, that's very good presentation that you have made, sir. That's very lovely. Now the session is open for discussion or the questions. Professor Sahai is a very experienced faculty member. So please try to ask the questions or doubts if you are having.
You please ask. Any questions from the side? Welcome. Please ask some questions if you have any doubts.
Actually, sir, what is the scope of the pseudo capacitor in coming future?
No, it is a good one. No? Pseudo capacitor is a super capacitor. It is only the terminology we are using here. Mainly there are two. One is EDLC, other is the.
It's a scope in coming future in energy storage. That is super capacitor. Yeah.
You see, people are trying to develop the renewable forms of the energy. Yeah. So if you are using your what you call the solar, wind, tidal, so these, of course, these renewable sources of energy will certainly reduce the problems of your what you call the pollution and all. But these renewable clean forms of the energy are restricted by the environmental factor. What is the environmental factor? Suppose the sun has not come. So it will affect something. So similarly, there is no wind. there is no flow, right? So because of that, the energy supply, we cannot ensure continuous supply. So there is a urgent need to develop effective and reliable devices for the energy storage. Somebody has asked this question.
Yeah, please.
Sir, please ask. You have to. Yes, there's the question.
Hello, good afternoon, sir.
Welcome.
Sir, Anupama Sahu, research scholar from NIT Rourkela. You have shown, sir, like conductivity and porosity both are important for superconductor, supercapacitor electrode application.
Right.
So is it like, sir, porosity and conductivity are inversely proportional? Because during my research, where we are getting low specific surface area, the activated carbon material, there we are finding like graphitic behavior, more conductivity property. And in some activated carbon material, we are finding high specific area. In that case, we are getting XRD like amorphous peaks, and the activated carbon electrode material are less conductive. So can we say like that is they are inversely proportional, or how they are interrelated for the same material?
Okay, you see, basically in the electrode materials, when the electrolyte ions, when the charge transfer occurred between the electrolyte ion and the electrode materials, so this charge should be moved. So if the conductivity of the electrode material will not be enough to transfer the charge, there is the accumulation of charge. So electrical conductivity of the electrode material, it should be high. But with the transition metal, it has been found that electrical conductivity is poor. So we'll have to enhance. So what we have to do? We'll have to do either you put some carbon, some composite, something you prepare, and so far you are telling the porosity. If your electrode material is porous, when it is porous, what you are telling, the specific surface area is more. Specific surface area is more. That will favor the electrochemical redox reaction. That will favor the redox reaction. So porosity, what will happen? The electrolyte ions will easily diffuse. So the porosity as well as the electrical conductivity of the electrode material will favor the electrochemical performance. Might be one may hinder the other, but we'll have to optimize in such a fashion. It is just like trade-off between electrical conductivity and porosity. Okay, but there is no doubt electrical conductivity of the electrode materials should be high.
Yes, sir. So that is due to the crystalline structure of the material, or amorphous can be also means by adding external objects we can increase conductivity, but
Yes,
but the activated carbon if itself is a crystalline material, some during chemical activation, like we are adding some chemicals that may contribute to the crystalline structure of the final activated carbon product. So
but if you are using the activated carbon, that will enhance the electrical conductivity of the your oxide materials.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The people are trying to do making the composite with the oxide materials with the activated carbons is also one of them.
Okay, sir.
Making the composite
Means to increase the conductivity also we are adding activated carbon to the
yes.
Not only porosity, like we have studied in literature, activated carbons are more means used due to their high porosity only. That is mainly we are talking, but this conductivity is also one of the important parameters.
One of the important parameters for better performance of the superconductivity.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Any more questions from your side?
Please. Is there any other question?
If there is no question, I will say something to the youngster.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Hello.
sir. Please continue. Please continue, sir.
So this is a message for the youngster and those who are doing. So when you are performing any experimental research work, the problem identification is very crucial. When you enter any research work, you have to identify the problem. So the problem identification is very crucial. Why I am telling, if you choose very exciting and new research problem, then what would happen? That would require a lot of infrastructure and well-equipped laboratory to solve the problem to a certain extent. But we are aware that such costly equipment and infrastructure are available only in a few highly reputed R&D lab and academic institutions. Similarly, if you choose the problem which does not add any new knowledge, then this study will not be much useful. So what you have to do? So what you have to do? You have to considering the infrastructure availability. What are the infrastructure availability either at your institute or nearby your area? Proper literature survey and scientific discussion and advice with your teachers and friends. Research problem is required to be identified. This is my conclusion. But I observed that sometimes some research scholar will ask, sir, I can do this thing. Of course, it can be tried, but all this will require a lot of infrastructure and well-equipped laboratory. I told that if you want to make a film by physical technique, it involves a costly, expensive equipment, except the thermal evaporation. Electron gun, flash evaporation, sputter, all these are costly. In many institutions, it is not available. So, and if you adopt the problem which does not add any knowledge, already this thing exists, that will also not serve the purpose. So, best way is that the newcomer, which are going to start some work, so they will have to consider the infrastructure availability in your institution as well as nearby your area. You have to good literature survey as well as the scientific discussion with the teacher and friends. You identify the problem. Then what will happen? At least you can do something. You can you will achieve to your target to some extent at that level, because already infrastructure are there with you, because you have already thought I will get this facility from here, this facility from there. That way, what are the work has been done? What something new can be done? You can get from the literature survey. What is in your mind that you are thinking, whether it is feasible or not, that we can discuss with your teacher. So all these will serve to adopt a good research problem. Okay. Okay, participants, any query from your side?
Oh, sir, you have rightly said that identifying the suitable problem is the biggest problem in research. So, and your suggestion is very good one, that one should go the literature survey. That is very, very important one, and infrastructure facility available. It's very good message, sir, that you have given. So, is there any other question? No. So on behalf of all the participants and my own behalf, sir, I would like to thank you very much for a very, very nice presentation. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. It was very nice.
Okay, thanks to all of you.
So now, sir, now you can leave this meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thanks to all of you.
Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir.
Okay.
So I have to share the assignment before that one. Let me just